I always thought betrayal would scream, but it actually arrived in total silence on a Tuesday morning. I opened my banking app to pay a $40 electric bill, only to see two words that stopped my heart: access denied. Someone was draining the $480,000 my grandmother left me, and the digital trail didn't lead to a stranger in a basement halfway across the world. It led straight to the house where I grew up. There is a specific kind of silence that exists in Briar Glen on a Tuesday morning. It is the silence of people who have somewhere to be. It is the sound of garage doors rumbling shut at 8 o'clock sharp, the hum of mid-range sedans pulling out of driveways, and the quiet satisfaction of bills being paid on time. I love that silence. At 33 years old, I had built my life around it. I worked as a logistics coordinator for a regional shipping firm, a job that required exactness and offered very little drama, which was exactly how I liked it. I drove a Honda that was 5 years old, paid my credit card balance in full every month, and lived in a one-bedroom apartment that smelled faintly of vanilla and lemon polish. To anyone looking in from the outside, I was Sarah Russell, a woman of modest means and sensible choices. They saw the coupons I clipped for the grocery store and the way I brown-bagged my lunch 4 days a week. What they did not see, and what I took great pains to hide, was the shadow financial life that ran parallel to my own. It was a secret composed of 6 digits and a heavy emotional anchor, the Eleanor Russell. Testamentary trust. My grandmother had left me everything. She had bypassed my parents entirely, skipping a generation to ensure that the money she made from her small chain of dry cleaning shops went directly to me. It sat in an investment account I rarely touched, a sum of $480,000 that grew quietly in the dark, shielded by tax structures and legal barricades. I treated it like a museum exhibit, something to be admired and protected, but never used. It was my safety net, my future house, my retirement. It was the physical manifestation of the only person who had ever truly seen me. I sat at my kitchen table with a mug of black coffee, the steam rising in the pale morning light. My phone lay on the placemat next to a piece of toast. It was time for the monthly ritual. I opened my banking app to pay the electric bill. It was a mundane task, one I could do in my sleep. My thumb hovered over the icon. I tapped it, and I waited for the familiar dashboard to load. Usually, the screen would flash blue, then display my checking balance. Today, it went gray. A red box appeared in the center of the screen. The text was bold and aggressive. Access denied. I frowned, tapping the refresh button. It was probably just the Wi-Fi. My router had been acting up lately, blinking orange whenever it rained. Though the sky outside was a perfect cloudless blue, I tried again. Access denied. Please contact security assistance. A cold prickle of irritation worked its way down my neck. I did not have time for this. I had a conference call at 10 regarding a shipment of medical supplies to Harrisburg, and I needed to be out the door in 20 minutes. I closed the app, cleared the cache, and reopened it. The same message stared back at me. This time, I noticed something else. Below the error message, in smaller font, was a line of text that made the coffee in my stomach turn sour. Account status. Pending verification hold due to multiple failed login attempts from unrecognized device. I stared at the words, multiple failed attempts. That was impossible. I had not tried to log in since last Friday when I transferred my paycheck savings. I lived alone. My phone was always in my hand or my purse. No one else had my passcode. I dialed the customer service number listed on the back of my debit card. The automated system tried to route me to the bill pay section, but I mashed the 0 button until a human voice finally cut through the hold music. Cedar Ridge Bank. This is Kevin. How can I help you today? Hi, Kevin, I said, trying to keep my voice even. I am locked out of my mobile app. It is saying there were multiple login attempts, but I have not tried to access the account for days. I just need to pay my electric bill. There was a pause on the line, followed by the click-clack of a keyboard. Okay, let me pull up your profile. Ms. Russell. One moment. I took a bite of my toast, but it tasted like cardboard. I waited. The silence stretched longer than a normal account lookup usually took. 10 seconds, 20 seconds, Ms. Russell Kevin's voice had changed. The cheery customer service lilt was gone, replaced by a clipped professional caution. I am going to need to transfer you to our fraud prevention department. Please hold. Wait, why I asked. Dropping the toast. Is it just a password reset? Please hold. Ms. Russell. The line clicked, and before I could protest, a different loop of hold music began. This one was classical, frantic violins that did nothing to lower my heart rate. I stood up and walked to the window. Looking out at the street, my neighbor, Mr. Henderson, was walking his golden retriever. The mail carrier was turning the corner. Everything looked normal, but the air in my kitchen suddenly felt thin. After 4 minutes, a woman picked up. This is Agent Miller in Fraud Prevention. Am I speaking with Sarah Jean Russell? Yes, that is me, Ms. Russell. For security purposes, can you please verify your mother's maiden name and the last 4 digits of your social security number? I gave her the information. My voice sounded small in the quiet apartment. Thank you, Agent Miller said. Her tone was dry, efficient, and utterly lacking in warmth. We have placed a temporary freeze on your entire portfolio due to a flagged transaction request initiated at 3 o'clock this morning. A transaction, I asked. I did not buy anything at 3 in the morning. I was asleep. This was not a purchase. Ms. Russell, it was a wire transfer request. I froze. A wire transfer. That implied intent. That implied someone moving money. Not just buying sneakers on a stolen credit card. How much, I asked. I cannot disclose full details until we verify your identity in person, but I can tell you the request was for the entirety of the liquid assets in the trust account ending in 409. The amount was $480,000. My knees gave out. I sat back down in the kitchen chair. Hard. The room seemed to tilt to the left. 480,000, I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. That is everything. That is the whole trust. Correct, Agent Miller said. The transfer was flagged because it exceeded your daily limit, and the destination account was new. However, the requester provided correct answers to 3 out of 5 security questions before failing the final 2. That is why the account locked. I stared at the wall, my mind racing. Correct answers. Someone knew my first pet. Someone knew the street I grew up on. Who was it, I demanded. Where did the request come from? We have the IP address logged, Agent Miller said. It traces back to a residential service provider in the greater Briar Glen area. Briar Glen. My city, Ms. Russell. Agent Miller continued, and her voice dropped an octave, becoming softer but sharper, like a knife wrapped in velvet. I need to ask you a standard question we ask in these situations. Is there any family member who might have access to your personal information, perhaps someone who knows your history well enough to guess your security answers? The question hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. My parents lived 20 minutes away. They knew the name of my first dog, Buster. They knew the street we lived on when I was born. They knew my mother's maiden name because it was her name. No, I said quickly, too quickly. My parents would never touch my money. We do not talk about finances. Agent Miller did not say anything for a long moment. When she spoke again, she sounded unconvinced. I understand. Regardless, the account is locked. To restore access and review the unauthorized request, you will need to visit a local branch with 2 forms of identification. We have also noted a document upload associated with the transfer request that will need to be reviewed. A document. What kind of document? It was labeled as an authorization form, she said. I cannot view the file from here, but the branch manager can access it. I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking. I looked at the clock. I had to be at work in 40 minutes. But there was no way I could focus on shipping manifests while someone was trying to gut my life savings. I texted my boss that I had a family emergency, which was true, in a way I did not yet understand, and grabbed my purse. The drive to Cedar Ridge Bank was a blur. I drove on autopilot, my brain looping through the conversation with Agent Miller. $480,000. Someone had tried to take it all. Not a portion, not a little slice to cover a debt. They wanted to wipe me out. The bank branch was cool and smelled of stale carpet cleaner. I walked straight to the glass-walled office at the back, ignoring the line for the tellers, the branch manager, a man named Mr. Gao who had helped me set up my checking account years ago, looked up from his computer. "Sarah," he said, standing up. "Good to see you. Is everything all right? You look pale. I need to see my account," I said, sitting in the chair opposite him without waiting for an invitation. "I just got off the phone with fraud. Someone tried to drain the trust." Mr. Gao's expression shifted instantly from social politeness to professional concern. He sat down and began typing rapidly. "Let me see," he muttered. He clicked a few times, then stopped. His eyes scanned the screen, moving back and forth. "Ah, I see the freeze. The woman on the phone said there was a document," I said. "She said someone uploaded an authorization form. I want to see it." Mr. Gao pursed his lips. He turned the monitor slightly away from me, a reflexive gesture of gatekeeping. "Sarah, because this is an active fraud investigation, I have to follow a strict protocol. The document was flagged as suspicious. I can see it here in the queue. But until our back office team clears the review, I cannot print it for you." "You have to be kidding me," I said, my voice rising. "It is my money. If someone is forging my signature, I need to know who it is." "I understand," he said soothingly. "But if I show you a document that might be part of a criminal inquiry, I could be liable for interfering with the investigation. What I can tell you is that it appears to be a scanned PDF. It is dated yesterday." "Does it have a name on it?" I asked. "Besides mine, Mr.?" Gao hesitated. He looked at the screen, then back at me. He took a breath. "It is signed by you, Sarah. Or at least, it looks like your signature. And there is a witness signature." Who is the witness?" He shook his head. "I cannot say more. Not yet. Give us 24 hours. I walked out of the bank into the bright, blinding sunshine of the parking lot. I felt sick. A witness signature. That meant there were two people involved. One to fake being me, and one to swear it was true. I sat in my car, the engine idling. I needed to call them. I needed to hear their voices. If my parents were innocent, they would be horrified. If they were guilty, I did not know what they would be. I did not want to think about the alternative. I dialed my mother's number. She picked up on the second ring. "Hi, honey," she chirped. "This is a nice surprise. Usually you are working right now." "Hi, Mom," I said. I was watching a woman walk her toddler across the parking lot. The child was laughing. I felt a pang of jealousy so sharp it hurt. I am actually taking the morning off. Something weird happened with my bank. "Oh," she asked. Her tone remained light, unbothered. "What kind of weird? I got hacked," I said. "Someone tried to transfer money out of the trust fund. A lot of money." There was a silence on the other end. It was short, maybe 2 seconds, but it felt heavy. "Oh my goodness," she said. "That is terrible. Is the money safe?" "The bank stopped it." I said, "But they said the hackers knew my security questions. They knew about Buster. They knew your maiden name." "Well, those are common things." "Sarah," she said quickly, "people put that information on the internet all the time. You probably did a quiz on Facebook or something. You know how dangerous those things are. I have never done a Facebook quiz." "Mom," Dad's voice came from the background, muffled. "Who is that? Is that Sarah?" "Yeah, it is Sarah," my mother said, her voice turning away from the phone. "She says someone tried to hack her bank account. I heard the rustle of the phone being passed. Sarah," my father's voice was deeper, rougher. "What is this about a hack? Someone tried to move the money." "Dad, all of it. That is ridiculous," he scoffed. "Banks these days are incompetent. It was probably a glitch. Why would anyone target you? You barely use that account. That is what makes it scary." I said, "I am standing in the Cedar Ridge parking lot right now. The manager said they uploaded a document." "A document," he repeated. "Yeah, like an authorization form." My father made a sound that was half cough, half grunt. "Well, you need to be careful. You do not want to go accusing people until you know the facts. These things happen. It is probably a clerical error at the Eleanor Russell Testamentary Trust. The air in my car went 0 degrees. I stared at the dashboard. My father was a retired mechanic. He was a simple man who liked football and cheap beer. He had never, in the entire 10 years since my grandmother died, called the trust by its full legal name. To him, it was always your grandmother's money or the inheritance. He had just called it the Eleanor Russell Testamentary Trust. The only way he would know that name, the exact phrasing, word for word, was if he had seen a header on a legal document recently. Sarah. "Are you there?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. My throat felt like it was closing up. "Yeah, I am here. You are right. Dad, it is probably just a clerical error. I should go. I have to talk to the police." I did not have to talk to the police. I had not even called them yet, but I wanted to see how he reacted. "The police," he said, his voice jumping a notch in pitch. "Why would you involve them? Let the bank handle it. You do not want to make a mess." "Sarah, it is a family matter. It is not a family matter. Dad, it is theft. I have to go." I hung up before he could answer. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. He knew. He knew the name. He knew the structure. And he didn't want the police involved. I put the car in drive, but I did not go back to my apartment. Instead, I turned left, heading toward the older part of town, toward the row of brick townhouses where my grandmother had lived for 40 years. I owned the house now. It was part of the trust. I had not been able to bring myself to sell it, and I could not bring myself to rent it out to strangers. So it sat empty, a dusty monument to the woman who had raised me. I paid the property taxes and the minimum utilities to keep the pipes from freezing, and I visited once a month to collect the mail. I parked on the street. The house looked tired. The paint on the shutters was peeling slightly. I walked up the steps, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. The smell hit me instantly: lavender, old paper, and the metallic tang of closed-up air. It smelled like safety. It smelled like the days when I would come here after school because my parents were too busy fighting to remember to pick me up. Grandma would make me cinnamon toast and tell me that the world was big, and I just had to be patient enough to find my place in it. I walked through the silent living room to the small study at the back of the house. This was where she had handled her business. The desk was still there, covered in a dust sheet. I pulled the sheet off. I needed to see the original paperwork. I needed to see exactly who had access to what. I went to the closet and knelt down. Hidden under a loose floorboard in the corner was a fireproof box. It was heavy, gray steel. I pulled the key from my own keychain. I kept it with me always, and inserted it into the lock. The latch clicked. I opened the lid. Inside, the papers were neatly organized, just as she had left them. There were tax returns from the 90s, deeds to the dry cleaning shops, and the thick bound copy of the trust agreement. I pulled out a manila envelope I did not recognize. It was not labeled. I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of stationery, my grandmother's handwriting looping across the page. "My dearest Sarah, if you are reading this, I am gone, and you are likely facing a decision. I have tied the money up not to control you, but to protect you. Money makes people funny. Sarah, even the people we love. Independence is the only true currency a woman has. Do not let anyone trade yours for a promise of security. You are your own security. Love. G." I wiped a tear from my cheek. She had known. Even back then, she had known that my parents looked at me and saw a resource, not a daughter. I reached back into the envelope. There was something else at the bottom. A small, stiff card. I pulled it out. It was a business card. Cream-colored stock. Expensive raised lettering. Holloway Rusk Wealth Partners. Investment Management Estate Planning. There was no name printed on the front. Just the firm's logo, a golden shield, but on the back, in my grandmother's shaky scrawl, was a note. "In case of emergency, ask for M." M. Who was M? I had never heard of anyone named M connected to the trust. The administrator was a corporate firm called Ashford Trust Services. Holloway Rusk was a local wealth management firm for the ultra-rich, the kind of place that had a waiting list and a marble lobby. Why did my grandmother have their card? I put the card in my pocket. I took the trust summary and the letter. I locked the box and put it back under the floorboard. I drove home in silence. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows across Briar Glen. The town that had felt so safe this morning now looked different. The houses looked like fortresses. The people walking their dogs looked like potential spies. I got back to my apartment and locked the door. I engaged the deadbolt and the chain. I sat on my couch and opened my laptop. I needed to change every password I had. Email, social media, utilities. I would burn my digital identity to the ground and build a new one. I logged into my email. A new message popped up at the top of the inbox. It had arrived 2 minutes ago. Subject profile details updated from Cedar Ridge Bank alerts. My heart stopped. I clicked the email. Dear customer, your contact information has been successfully updated. New mailing address, P.O. Box 459, Briar Glen, PA. New mobile number ending in 8892. I stared at the screen. I had not changed my address. I had not changed my phone number. Someone was still inside. Despite the freeze, despite the fraud report, someone had enough credentials to bypass the primary lock and alter the recovery information. They were rerouting my mail. They were changing the phone number so that when the bank called to verify the fraud, they would call the thief. Not me. It was not just a theft. It was an eviction. They were trying to kick me out of my own existence. I grabbed my phone to call the bank again, but I hesitated. If they had changed the number on file, the bank might not even recognize my voice anymore. I stood up and paced the small living room. My parents, the Eleanor Russell Testamentary Trust, the hesitation on the phone, the family matter. It was them. It had to be them. But they were not smart enough to do this alone. My father struggled to program the DVR. My mother typed with one finger. They could not hack a bank-level encryption system. They could not forge digital signatures and reroute database alerts. They had help. I pulled the business card out of my pocket. Holloway Rusk. Ask for M. I looked at the card. Then back at the terrifying email on my screen. I did not sleep that night. I sat in the dark, watching the streetlights flicker outside my window, listening to the silence of Briar Glen. But it was no longer the silence of peace. It was the silence of a hunter waiting in the brush. They thought they were fast. They thought they were clever. They thought that because I was quiet, I was weak. I touched the card in my pocket again. Tomorrow, I would find and then I would find out exactly who was trying to steal my life. I was Sarah Russell. I was my grandmother's granddaughter. And I was not going down without a fight. The morning sun did not feel like a new beginning. It felt like an interrogation lamp. I sat in a stiff leather chair in the back office of Cedar Ridge Bank, watching a man named Mr. Sadowski type on a keyboard that seemed far too small for his thick, heavy hands. He was the senior fraud officer, a title that carried a weight I was just beginning to understand. The air conditioner hummed a low, monotonous note that vibrated in my teeth. I had barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the email alert. Profile updated, new phone number, new address. The digital walls of my life were being rearranged by invisible hands, and I was stuck on the outside. Pounding on the glass, Mr. Sadowski stopped typing. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. He looked tired, not in the way of someone who stayed up late, but in the way of someone who had seen too many people lose things they could not get back. Ms. Russell, he began, his voice gravelly. We have completed the preliminary trace on the login attempt, and I asked, my hands gripping the armrests, who was it? It is not that simple, he said. He turned the monitor slightly so I could see a graph that meant nothing to me, just jagged red lines and timestamps. The system lockout was not triggered by a brute force attack. No one was guessing your password. The lockout happened because the user attempted to authenticate using legacy credentials. Legacy credentials, I repeated. Old data. he explained. We are talking about administrative keys that were tied to the original trust formation records. These are credentials that predate your current online banking profile. They bypass the standard consumer login because they are coded for trustee oversight. I stared at him. Trustee oversight. That sounded like legal jargon for someone having a master key. Who has those credentials? I asked. Technically, no one should. Mr. Sadowski said. They were supposed to be deprecated when the trust fully vested in your name at age 30. But the system flagged them because they were used in conjunction with a correct answer to a security question that has not been active on your account for 5 years. He looked at me significantly. The question was, what was the model of your first car? I felt a chill. I had a beat-up Ford Escort when I was 16. I had loved that car. My father had spent 3 weekends rebuilding the transmission before I was allowed to drive it. My parents. I whispered, Mr. Sadowski did not confirm it. He could not, but he did not look away. The attempt came from a device that had previously accessed the trust administration portal. He said carefully, years ago, the IP address resolves to a residential connection here in Briar Glen. But here is the catch. Ms. Russell, the bank cannot unlock the full account history or show you the uploaded authorization document because the request originated through a third-party link. What does that mean? It means the command to move the money did not start in our app, he said. It started at the source, the trust administrator, Ashford Trust Services. Our system only caught it because the amount $480,000 hit a hard limit for outgoing wires. If they had transferred $10,000, or maybe even $50,000, it might have gone through without a hitch. I felt sick. Ashford Trust Services. They were the keepers of the paperwork. They were supposed to be the vault. You need to go to Ashford, Mr. Sadowski said, sliding a piece of paper across the desk. You need to find out who is listed as an authorized party on their end, because from where I am sitting, it looks like someone told our system they had the right to be there. I left the bank with the sensation that the ground was made of thin ice. I walked to my car, the heat of the pavement radiating up through the soles of my shoes. I dialed the number for Ashford Trust Services. It rang 4 times before a woman answered. Her voice was clipped, efficient, and annoyed. Ashford Trust, Compliance Division. My name is Sarah Russell. I said, I am the beneficiary of the Eleanor Russell Testamentary Trust. I need to speak to someone immediately about an unauthorized transfer attempt. There was a pause, then the sound of typing. Ms. Russell, the woman said, her tone shifting from annoyed to icy. We show a security flag on your file. I cannot discuss account details over the phone. I do not want to discuss details. I snapped. I want to know why someone tried to drain my account using old credentials. Ms. Russell, you are currently under a verification hold. She interrupted. If you wish to make changes to high sensitivity settings, you must appear in person at our regional office. We have strict protocols for identity confirmation. She made it sound like I was the criminal, like I was the one trying to break in. I will be there in 20 minutes. I said. I hung up and threw the phone onto the passenger seat. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a rage that was starting to boil over the lip of my composure. The drive to the Ashford office took 30 minutes. It was located in a corporate park on the edge of town, a sterile collection of glass buildings surrounded by perfectly manicured hedges. I parked and walked into the lobby. It smelled of floor wax and money. I went up to the 4th floor. The receptionist looked at my ID as if it might be fake, then buzzed me through a heavy oak door. I was led to a small conference room with no windows. A clerk came in 5 minutes later. She was young, wearing a blazer that looked too big for her, and she carried a thick file folder. Ms. Russell, she asked. I am Jessica. I am the junior account manager. I want to see the access log. I said, I did not want pleasantries. I wanted names. Jessica sat down and opened the file. She looked nervous. We have reviewed the activity, she said. It appears there was a reactivation of a dormant user profile 2 days ago. Dormant user, I asked. I am the only user. I am the sole beneficiary. Well, not technically, she said. The trust instrument allows for an administrative liaison, A third party designated to handle paperwork and communication between the beneficiary and the firm. I never designated anyone, I said. Jessica looked at the paper in front of her. According to our records, a liaison has been listed on the file since the trust was funded 10 years ago. The status was active until you turned 30. Then it was set to read only, but 2 days ago, a request was submitted to restore full administrative privileges. Who I demanded. Who is the liaison? Jessica hesitated. She turned the page. The name on file is Marion Klein. I stared at her. The name meant absolutely nothing to me. I ran it through my mind: neighbors, teachers, my grandmother's old friends. Nothing. I do not know who that is. I said, "That is strange," Jessica said, her brow furrowing, because the reinstatement request was accompanied by family-supplied documentation. We have a notarized affidavit from the original file setup. Let me see it. I cannot show you the full unredacted documents until legal clears it, she said, pulling the file back. But I can print a history log. It will show the timestamps. She left the room and returned a moment later with a single sheet of paper. I snatched it from her hand. It was a list of dates and times. January 24th, 2026, 14:30. User admin. Liaison status. Updated active. January 24th, 2026, 14:35. User M_Klein. Document upload. auth_transfer.pdf. January 24th, 2026, 14:45. User M_Klein. xt. _communication, Cedar Ridge Gateway, Marion Klein. Whoever she was, she had logged in 2 days ago, changed the permissions, and triggered the transfer. But Jessica had said something else. Family-supplied documentation. I looked up at her. You said the original file had a notarized affidavit. From when? From 10 years ago, Jessica said, when the assets were first moved over after the probate period. 10 years ago, the realization hit me so hard, I actually stopped breathing for a second. 10 years ago, my grandmother had just died. I was 23. I was a wreck. I had spent weeks sitting in her living room, crying, unable to touch anything. My parents had come over. They had been so helpful. Sarah, honey, you do not need to deal with this right now, my mother had said, handing me a cup of tea. Let us handle the boring stuff. We will take the tax folders and the legal junk to the accountant. You just grieve. They had taken boxes, 5 or 6 banker boxes filled with my grandmother's financial history, old tax returns, bank statements, legal correspondence. They told me they were organizing it. They told me they were saving me from the stress. I had never asked for the boxes back. I stood up. Thank you. I said to Jessica, I need to go. Ms. Russell, wait. We need to verify your signature against I did not wait. I walked out of the conference room, out of the lobby, and back to my car. Marion Klein might have been the name on the screen, but she was not the architect. She was a tool. My parents had the source code. They had the original files. They had everything they needed to build a duplicate key to my life, and they had been holding on to it for a decade, waiting for the right moment to turn it. I drove to my parents' house. It was a 20-minute drive to the suburbs where I grew up. The house was a split-level beige vinyl box with a meticulously weeded lawn. My father was obsessed with the lawn. He treated dandelions like personal insults. I pulled into the driveway. My father's truck was there. My mother's sedan was there. It looked like a normal Tuesday. I got out of the car. My legs felt heavy, like I was walking through water. I went to the front door and used my key. I did not knock. I walked into the kitchen. My mother was standing at the sink, peeling potatoes. My father was sitting at the table, reading the sports section of the newspaper. A half-eaten ham sandwich sat on a plate in front of him. They looked up as I entered. For a split second, I saw a flash of panic in my father's eyes, a tightening of my mother's mouth, but then it was gone, replaced by a mask of parental concern. Sarah, my mother exclaimed, wiping her hands on a dish towel, we were just talking about you. How are you holding up? Did you get that bank mess sorted out? I stood in the doorway, clutching my purse. I looked at the magnets on the fridge. I looked at the ceramic rooster cookie jar that had been there since I was 5. It was all so familiar, and yet it felt like a stage set. I went to Ashford Trust today, I said. The room went very quiet. The only sound was the refrigerator humming. My father folded his newspaper slowly. He did not look at me. He looked at the table. "Why would you go there?" he asked. His voice was casual, but tight. "Because the bank told me the transfer attempt used legacy credentials." I said, "Credentials that came from the original trust files. The files you took from Grandma's house 10 years ago." My mother laughed. It was a high, brittle sound. "Sarah, do not be silly. We took those files to help you. We gave them all to the accountant. I know about Marion Klein." I said. My father's head snapped up. His face was flushing a dark, ugly red. "Who?" he said. "Marion Klein," I repeated. "The liaison you listed on the account. The person who tried to move my money 2 days ago." My mother walked around the island. She reached out as if to touch my arm, but I took a step back. "Sarah, listen to me," she said, her voice trembling. "You are under a lot of stress. You are imagining things. We do not know any Marion Klein. Why would we try to take your money? We are your parents. We love you." I looked at her. I saw the tears welling up in her eyes. They were the same tears she used when she wanted to guilt me into coming for Christmas, or when she wanted to know why I wasn't married yet. "Stop it," I said. "I saw the logs. The access came from here, from Briar Glen." My father slammed his hand down on the table. The plate jumped. "Enough," he shouted. He stood up, looming over the table. "You come into this house, the house that raised you, and you accuse us of being thieves after everything we have done for you. What have you done for me, Dad?" I asked quietly. "Besides, tell me I'm not smart enough to handle my own business. We protected you," he roared. "We protected you from the burden of that money. Your grandmother had no right to dump that on you. She did it to spite us. She knew we were struggling, and she gave it all to you just to watch us squirm. So you admit it," I said. "You think the money belongs to you." "It is family money," he yelled. "It belongs to the family. We have bills. Sarah, we have debts. The business is going under, and you are sitting on $500,000 like it is a trophy. You are ungrateful. That is what you are. Ungrateful and selfish." My mother was crying openly now, but she wasn't looking at my father. She was looking at me, her eyes pleading. "Sarah, please," she sobbed. "We were just trying to protect you from stress. You know how you get. You get so anxious. We thought if we just handled it, if we just moved the funds to a safer management account, we could generate some income for everyone. We were going to pay you back." "Pay me back," I said. "You were stealing it." "We were managing it," my mother insisted. She clasped her hands together. "You know what your grandmother always used to say? The storm does not ask the tree for permission to blow. We were just bracing the house." "Sarah." I froze. "The storm does not ask the tree for permission to blow." My grandmother had written that in a letter to me when I was 12. It was a specific phrase about resilience. She had never said it out loud to them. She had written it in a private correspondence that was in the same box as the trust documents. The only way my mother could recite that sentence, word for word, with that specific cadence, was if she had studied my grandmother's letters. She had read them. She had memorized the tone, the syntax, the emotional hooks, so she could use them against me. She wasn't quoting my grandmother. She was wearing her skin. I looked at them, really looked at them. My father, purple with entitlement. My mother, dissolving into manipulative tears. They weren't desperate people making a mistake. They were calculated. They had been planning this. They had waited until they thought I was complacent enough, and then they had struck. I turned around and walked out. "Sarah, come back here," my father shouted. "Do not you walk away from me." I slammed the front door behind me. I got into my car and locked the doors. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely put the key in the ignition. I drove. I didn't know where I was going, just that I had to get away from that house. I drove until I reached the parking lot of a grocery store 3 towns over. I sat there for an hour, just breathing. When my heart finally slowed down to a rhythm that didn't feel like a heart attack, I remembered the email. Not the alert from the bank. The other one. The memory of an email I had ignored years ago. I pulled out my phone and opened my email app. I searched for Holloway. It took a moment, searching through years of archived promotional trash and receipts. Then, it popped up. Subject welcome packet. Reference: Eleanor Russell Estate. Date March 12, 2018. From info@hollowayrusk.com. I opened it. It was addressed to my grandmother, but it had been C-side to my email address, probably automatically by some system she had set up before she died. I had never opened it because the subject line looked like spam. I downloaded the attachment. It was a PDF. Dear Eleanor, per your request for family oversight options, we have attached the outline for the protective trust variance. This structure will allow for a silent partner to intervene in the event of incapacitation or external threat. Silent partner. I scrolled down. There was a list of services, and at the bottom, a section titled Designated Liaisons. It was blank in the PDF, but the email text had a note from a sender simply signed M. Eleanor. Bring the signed copy when you come in next week. We will keep the M. Klein identity dormant as discussed until you trigger it. Smart move keeping the parents out of the direct loop. My grandmother had created Marion Klein. My brain spun. Grandma had created the identity. We will keep the Ma. Klein identity dormant. It was a failsafe, a fake identity, or a shell company she had set up. But if Grandma created it to keep my parents out, how did they get control of it? They found the paperwork. They found the Ask for M card. They found the login codes in those boxes they took. They realized that Marion Klein was a backdoor, and they had figured out how to pick the lock. I needed a lawyer, not a family lawyer, not someone who would tell me to make peace. I needed someone who hunted sharks. I searched for consumer rights attorneys in Briar Glen. I found a website for a woman named Elena Park. Her reviews were aggressive. She made the bank cry. One review said, "She does not settle unless you win." Said another, I called her office. It was 5 o'clock. A receptionist answered, "Park Law. How can I help you? I need to speak to Elena Park." I said, "My parents just confessed to trying to steal $500,000 from my trust fund, and I think they are using a fake identity my grandmother created to do it." There was a silence. "Can you be here in 30 minutes?" the receptionist asked. I was there in 20. Elena Park's office was in a converted brick warehouse in the Arts District. It was messy, stacked with file boxes, and smelled of strong coffee. Elena herself was small, sharp-featured, and wore glasses with thick black frames. She did not offer me tea. She offered me a notepad. "Start from the beginning," she said. "Do not leave out the small stuff." I told her everything. The banking app, the lockout, the legacy credentials, the visit to Ashford, Marion Klein, the confrontation with my parents, the phrase about the storm, the email from Holloway Rusk. When I finished, Elena leaned back in her chair. She tapped her pen against her chin. "You are in a dangerous position, Sarah," she said. Her voice was calm, clinical. But I caught them. I said, "The bank stopped the transfer, for now." Elena said. She stood up and walked to a whiteboard on the wall. She wrote fraud and family and drew a line between them. "Here is the problem," she said. "Your parents are not just thieves. They are insiders. They have intimate knowledge of the trust's history. They have physical possession of original documents. And most importantly, they have a narrative. A narrative, look at it from a judge's perspective." She said, "You are a single woman living a modest life. You rarely touch the money. Your parents are struggling. They can claim that you verbally authorized them to manage the funds to help the family. They can claim that Marion Klein was a mutual decision. But I did not sign anything I protested. They uploaded a document. Elena reminded me, a document the bank won't show you yet. If they forged your signature, and if they have a witness, maybe a notary they paid off, or a friend who lied, then it becomes a battle of experts. Handwriting analysis, digital forensics. She turned to look at me. If they are desperate enough to try this, Sarah, they are desperate enough to lie under oath. And right now, they are probably scrubbing their hard drives and rehearsing their story. We were just trying to help her. She is unstable. She forgets things. I felt a cold knot in my stomach. She forgets things. That was exactly what my mother would say. So what do I do? I asked. Rule number 1, Elena said, holding up a finger. You stop talking to them. Right now. Block their numbers. Block their emails. Do not answer the door. If they show up, you call the police. Call the police on my parents. Elena's eyes were hard. They are not your parents right now. They are opposing counsel. Every word you say to them can be twisted. If you say, I'm sorry you're struggling, they will use that as proof you agreed to help them. Rule number 2, she continued. We document everything. You are going to request full access logs from the bank and the trust. We are going to send a formal preservation letter to Holloway Rusk, and we are going to file a police report for identity theft. I swallowed hard. A police report. That made it real. That made it criminal. And rule number 3, Elena said, her voice softening just a fraction. You need to prepare yourself. This is not going to be a quick fix. If they have forged documents, this is going to be procedural, slow, and ugly. They are going to drag your grandmother's name through the mud. They are going to question your mental health. They are going to try to break you. She leaned across the desk. Whoever initiated that transfer, she said, referencing the M. Klein persona, has already thought about what happens if they get caught. They have a reasonable explanation ready. We have to be ready to tear it apart. I looked at the whiteboard, fraud, family. I thought about the box under the floorboards in my grandmother's house. I thought about the business card. Ask for Mo. My grandmother had prepared for this. She had known they would come for the money eventually. She had left me a map, but the pieces were scattered. I picked up the pen Elena had given me. Where do we start? I asked. Elena smiled. It was a sharp, dangerous smile. We start by locking the doors, she said, and then we set the alarm. The act of freezing your financial life feels surprisingly like checking into a hospital. There is the same sterile bureaucracy, the same repetitive questions, and the same underlying shame that you have somehow failed to keep yourself healthy. I sat at my kitchen table for 6 hours on Wednesday, a phone pressed to my ear, working through a list Elena had given me. I called the 3 major credit bureaus. I placed a fraud alert on my Social Security number. I called the trust administrator again and demanded a lock on all disbursements, even the scheduled quarterly maintenance fees for the townhouse. I had to say the words familial identity theft so many times they started to lose their meaning. They became just sounds. Yes, the perpetrators are known to me. Yes, they had access to my personal information. No, I do not want to press charges yet, but I want the record noted. That last part was the lie I told the customer service representatives to make myself feel better. I did want to press charges, or at least, the angry, terrified part of me did. But the daughter part of me, the part that remembered my father teaching me to ride a bike and my mother making chicken soup when I had the flu, felt like I was committing a mortal sin. I was reporting my own parents as threats. I was cutting off their access to me. I was admitting that the people who were supposed to be my safety net were actually the trap. By Thursday morning, I had built a digital fortress around my name, but I still needed answers about the breach itself. Elena had sent a preservation letter to Holloway Rusk, the wealth management firm whose business card I had found in my grandmother's box. The letter demanded they preserve all records related to the Eleanor Russell estate. In response, they had granted me a 15-minute meeting with their compliance manager. The firm was located in a glass tower downtown, the kind of building where the elevator buttons were polished brass and the air smelled of expensive cologne. I wore my best suit, a navy blue blazer I usually saved for annual reviews, and tried to look like I belonged there. The receptionist led me to a conference room that overlooked the city. A man walked in 2 minutes later. He was tall, wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than my car, and he introduced himself as Mr. Vance, Miss Russell, he said, not offering his hand. Please, have a seat. We received your counsel's letter. I must state up front that due to client confidentiality, my ability to discuss specific account directives is limited. I did not sit. I stood by the window, my arms crossed. I am not asking for directives. Mr. Vance, I said, I am asking why your firm has a profile on me at all. I am not a client. My trust is administered by Ashford. Yet I found an email from your firm to my grandmother referencing a silent partner and a Marion Klein. Mr. Vance's face remained perfectly smooth. He adjusted his cufflinks. Our firm provides comprehensive estate planning strategies, he said smoothly. Your grandmother was a valued client. We often assist in drafting the architecture of complex trusts. And Marion Klein, I asked, the liaison who tried to drain my account on Tuesday, Mr. Vance didn't blink. The liaison role is a standard structural component. If an individual named Marion Klein was activated, it was done according to the protocols established by the grantor. Our firm acted only on instructions received from the authorized trust liaison. We did not initiate the transfer. We simply facilitated the paperwork verification. He was slippery. He was putting distance between the firm and the crime. We didn't steal the money. We just held the door open for the person who did. So you verify forgeries, I asked, because I did not sign that authorization. If there is a dispute regarding authenticity, that is a matter for forensic review, he said, checking his watch. Is there anything else? Ms. Russell. As I said, our role here is advisory. I looked at him. He was dismissing me. He thought I was a nuisance, a little girl who didn't understand how the big boys played with money. I will be back, I said, and next time, I will have a subpoena. Mr. Vance gave a tight, patronizing smile. We always cooperate with lawful requests. Good day, Ms. Russell. I walked out of the conference room. My blood boiling, I marched through the hallway, heading for the elevators. I was so angry I almost missed it. In the main lobby, near the reception desk, there was a wall of framed photographs. Community partners. The plaque read, they were photos of charity galas, golf tournaments, and ribbon-cutting ceremonies. I stopped. In the third photo from the left, taken at a Holloway Rusk annual charity ball dated 4 years ago, was a group of men in tuxedos holding champagne flutes. Second from the right was a senior executive of the firm. I recognized him from the website. And standing next to him, wearing a tuxedo that looked slightly ill-fitting across the shoulders, was my father. I stared at the glass. My father hated suits. He hated parties. He called people who drank champagne fancy pants and mocked them. Yet there he was, smiling a wide, toothy smile, his arm around a Holloway Rusk partner. He had never mentioned this. He had never mentioned knowing anyone at this firm. I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture of the frame. The receptionist looked up, frowning. No photography in the lobby. Please, she said. I ignored her. I turned and walked out the revolving doors. My father wasn't just a desperate mechanic who found a loophole. He was connected. He had been grooming a relationship with these people for years. I went straight to Elena's office. She looked at the photo on my phone, zooming in on my father's face. Well, she said, that explains the confidence. He is not working alone. He has a friend on the inside. Maybe not the firm itself, but someone there. She turned her laptop screen toward me. I got a response to our initial discovery request. She said, it is thin, but it is telling. She pointed to a line item on a spreadsheet. Billing code 902. Strategic consultation. Client Russell family. Date October 14th, 2019. 2019. I asked. That was 7 years ago. Elena nodded. And look at the frequency. Quarterly meetings. Billed as estate maintenance. Sarah, this wasn't a panic move because of a failed business loan. Your parents have been meeting with Holloway Rusk for years. They have been planning this since before you turned 30. They were waiting. Waiting for what? Waiting for the trust to vest, she said. Waiting for the moment the restrictions loosened just enough for a liaison to step in. They have been paying for advice on how to bypass you. I sat back in the chair. The betrayal felt physical, like a blow to the ribs. I had spent the last 7 years having Sunday dinners with them. I had bought them anniversary gifts. I had listened to my father complain about his back and my mother complain about the neighbors. And the whole time, they were going to meetings to figure out how to rob me. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was an email notification. Subject proposal for family resolution. From Frank Russell, my father. I opened it. It wasn't written in his voice. There were no typos. There were no rambling sentences. Sarah, we are deeply saddened by the misunderstanding that has occurred. In the interest of preserving our family relationship and avoiding unnecessary legal costs, we propose the attached settlement. Please review this with an open heart. We only want what is best for everyone. Attached was a PDF file titled family_settlement_agreement.pdf. Elena leaned over and clicked it open. She scanned the document, her eyes narrowing behind her glasses. Standard release, she muttered. Confidentiality clause. Waiver of all future claims. Mutual non-disparagement. She stopped at paragraph 4. The beneficiary agrees to appoint Marion Klein as permanent administrative liaison for the purpose of debt consolidation and family asset management. In exchange for a guaranteed monthly stipend of $2,000 to be paid to the beneficiary, I laughed. It was a dark, choked sound. They want to put me on an allowance. I said, they want to take the $480,000, pay off their debts, and give me $2,000 a month. And in exchange, Elena said, pointing to the bottom of the page, you agree to waive any right to sue for fraud, forgery, or identity theft. They are trying to buy your silence with your own money. I looked at the screen. It was so cold, so transactional. Do not reply, Elena said. Not yet. I went home to my empty apartment. The silence was deafening. I felt like a ghost in my own life. I heated up a can of soup but couldn't eat it. At 8 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. I froze. I wasn't expecting anyone. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. It was my mother. She was alone. She was wearing a raincoat, even though it wasn't raining. She looked small. I debated not opening it. Elena had said rule number 1, stop talking to them. But she was my mother, and she looked broken. I opened the door, but I kept the chain on. Mom, I said through the crack. Sarah, she whispered, please, I just want to talk. No yelling. Just 5 minutes. I looked at her hands. They were empty. No papers. No phone recording. I undid the chain and opened the door. She stepped inside and stood in the entryway. She didn't hug me. She wrapped her arms around herself. I didn't know about the email. She said, her voice was shaky, your father sent it. I told him not to. It is too cold. It is blackmail. Mom, I said. She winced. It is not blackmail. Honey, it is desperation. She looked up at me, and her eyes were red-rimmed. You have to understand. Sarah, we are drowning. The shop has been losing money for 3 years. Dad took out a loan against the house to cover payroll. And then he got sick last winter, you remember the flu? It wasn't the flu. It was a mild heart attack. The bills were $20,000. We are 3 months behind on the mortgage. If we do not come up with $50,000 by next week, the bank takes the house. I stared at her. They had lied about his heart attack. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. I would have helped. Dad has pride, she said. He couldn't ask his daughter for money. He couldn't admit he failed. So stealing from me was better, I asked. Forging my signature was better. She reached out and took my hand. Her palms were clammy. We weren't stealing. Sarah, we were just borrowing. We were going to invest the rest with Holloway. They promised returns. We could have paid the mortgage, paid you back, and everyone would have been safe. We were trying to save the family. I looked at her pleading face. I felt a crack in my resolve. It was true that $50,000 was a lot of money to them, to the trust. It was 10%. I could afford it. I could write a check, save their house, and end this nightmare. I took a deep breath. Okay, I said. Her face lit up with hope. Okay. You will sign the agreement? No. I said. I will not sign the agreement. I will not let you have control of the trust, and I will not let Marion Klein near my accounts. Her face fell. But, I continued, I will not let you lose the house. I will give you a loan. $50,000. We will write it up legally. You will sign a promissory note. I will pay the bank directly, not you, not Dad. I will pay the mortgage company. And in exchange, you withdraw the settlement offer and you tell me exactly who at Holloway Rusk helped you. I watched her face carefully. I was offering them a lifeline. I was offering to save them from ruin. But her expression didn't show relief. It showed panic. We can't do that, she stammered. Why not, I asked. It solves the problem. It saves the house. It is not just the mortgage. Sarah, she snapped, pulling her hand away, you do not understand. The structure. We need the structure. We need the control to make the investments work. Holloway said. She stopped. She realized she had said too much. Holloway said what I asked. My voice hardening. Holloway said you needed the whole $480,000. She looked down. It is an investment vehicle, she mumbled. It requires a minimum buy-in. I stepped back. The pity I had felt evaporated. This isn't about the mortgage. Is it? I said. You do not just want to be safe. You want to be rich. You want to take my grandmother's money and gamble it on some scheme your friend at the firm sold you. Sarah, please, get out. I said, Sarah, get out. I pointed to the door. She looked at me with a mix of fear and anger. Then her face hardened into something unrecognizable. You are just like her. She spat. Cold. Selfish. You would watch your own parents sleep on the street just to prove a point. I opened the door. Go. She left. I slammed the door and locked it. I leaned my forehead against the wood. Shaking. I had offered them help. Transparent. Honest help. And they had rejected it because it didn't come with the power to control me. The backlash started the next morning. I woke up to a string of text messages. Aunt Linda, I heard what you are doing to your parents. I thought we raised you better than to kick people when they are down. Cousin Mike. Seriously. Sarah calling lawyers on your own dad. He's a veteran. Have some respect. Mrs. Gable neighbor. Your mother called me crying. She says you are trying to evict them. Shame on you. My father. He had flipped the narrative. He knew I wouldn't sign the waiver, so he had launched the smear campaign. He was telling everyone I was the aggressor. He was painting me as the ungrateful daughter abandoning her elderly, sick parents. I didn't reply to any of them. I took screenshots and sent them to Elena. Add it to the file, I typed. Then came the second surprise. I was at work, trying to focus on a shipping invoice, when my phone buzzed with an alert from the credit monitoring service I had set up on Wednesday. Alert. New inquiry detected. I clicked the app. Inquiry type, soft pull. Requester quick cash lending services. Date today. I frowned. I hadn't applied for a loan, and soft pulls were usually for pre-approvals. I called Elena immediately. Elena, I said, why would a lender be doing a soft pull on my credit? I froze everything. Soft pulls are different, she said. They are for background checks or pre-qualification. They don't need your permission in the same way. Who is the lender? Quick cash lending. That is a predatory lender. Elena said, high interest, fast approval. But why, I asked. They can't open a loan if the credit is frozen. No, Elena said slowly. They can't open a loan in your name, but they can use the inquiry to establish a profile. What do you mean? Sarah, listen to me carefully. Your parents know they can't access the trust directly anymore. You block them. The bank blocked them. So they are pivoting to what, if they can't control the money, they have to control the person who holds the money. I felt a cold shiver go down my spine. Elena continued, her voice sharp and urgent. They are building a case that you are financially unstable, that you are being manipulated, that you are making erratic decisions like abandoning your family or refusing reasonable settlements, if they can show that you have secret debts or that you are mentally unfit to manage the estate. They can petition the court. Petition for what I asked, though I think I already knew the answer. For conservatorship, Elena said, or a guardianship. They will claim you are under undue influence, probably mine, and that you are a danger to your own financial future. They will use the stress of the fraud investigation which they caused as proof that you are cracking. I stared at the phone. It was diabolical. They would gaslight the legal system. They would break me, then point to the broken pieces and say, "See? She needs us to hold her together." "Is that possible?" I whispered. "Can they actually do that?" "It is rare," Elena said, "and it is hard. But if they have a corrupt professional on their side like someone at Holloway Rusk, who is willing to testify that you seemed confused or erratic, then yes, it is possible." I looked out the window of my office. The world looked the same as it had yesterday, but the geometry had changed. The walls were closing in. They are not stopping. "Are they?" I asked. "No," Elena said. "They are escalating, and that means we have to stop playing defense." "What do we do?" "We find the leverage," she said. "We find the document they don't want us to see. We find out what happened in the winter your grandmother mentioned. We find the skeletons." I hung up the phone. I thought about the letter from my grandmother. The winter I had to correct your parents' story at the courthouse. There was a legal conflict in the past, something my parents had lost, something they were terrified I would find out about. I grabbed my purse. I was done feeling ashamed. I was done waiting for the next blow. I was going back to the townhouse. I was going to tear that place apart until I found out exactly who my parents really were. The silence in my grandmother's townhouse was different from the silence in my apartment. My apartment was quiet because it was empty. The townhouse was quiet because it was holding its breath. I stood in the hallway on Saturday morning, a crowbar in one hand and a flashlight in the other. I felt like an intruder in the only place that had ever felt like home. I had spent the last 2 days fighting a war on 2 fronts, the legal battle with the banks and the psychological battle with my parents' smear campaign. My phone was full of messages from cousins I hadn't seen in 5 years, telling me I was heartless. My credit report was frozen. But the soft inquiry from the predatory lender still burned like a brand. Elena had told me to find the skeletons. "We find the leverage," she had said. I started in the master bedroom. I pulled out drawers. I checked under the mattress. I felt along the back of the heavy oak dresser. Nothing but dust bunnies and old receipts for dry cleaning fluid. I moved to the closet. It was a walk-in, smelling of cedar and mothballs. My grandmother's coats were still hanging there, preserved in plastic bags. I pushed them aside, the plastic rustling like dry leaves. I knelt on the floor. I remembered something from when I was 7 years old. I had been playing hide and seek, and I had squeezed into the back of this closet. I remembered seeing my grandmother on her knees, prying at the corner of the baseboard with a butter knife. When she saw me, she hadn't scolded me. She had just put a finger to her lips and winked. Secret spots for secret things. "Sarah," she had whispered. I shone the flashlight into the corner. The paint on the baseboard was slightly chipped. I wedged the flat end of the crowbar behind the wood and applied gentle pressure. It gave with a groan of old nails. I pulled it back just an inch. There was a hollow space between the drywall and the floor. I reached in. My fingers brushed against dust, rough wood, and then paper. I pulled it out. It was a thin, white envelope. It wasn't sealed. On the front, in my grandmother's distinctive, spidery cursive, was a single word, "Sarah." I sat back on my heels, the crowbar clattering to the floor. My heart hammered against my ribs. This wasn't a tax return. This wasn't a deed. This was a voice from the grave. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of lined notebook paper, dated 4 months before she died. "My darling Sarah, if you have found this, it means the wolves are at the door. I hoped they never would be, but I am a pragmatist, not a dreamer. You need to understand why I built the trust the way I did. It was not to keep the money from you. It was to keep the money from them. Your father believes he is owed things. He believes the world has shortchanged him, and therefore, he is entitled to balance the scales however he sees fit. Your mother loves peace more than she loves truth, and she will agree to anything if it stops him from yelling. That is a dangerous combination. Listen to me carefully. If anyone pressures you to sign something quickly, it is because time helps them, not you. Urgent requests are the hallmark of a scam, especially when they come from family. I have seen this before. Do not let them repeat the winter I had to correct your parents' story at the courthouse. I sealed that record to protect your childhood. But I kept the truth safe. Do not let them rewrite history. Stand tall. You are stronger than they are, because you do not need anyone else's money to be whole. Love, Grandma. I read the letter 3 times. The winter I had to correct your parents' story at the courthouse. She had never told me about a court case. I knew my parents and grandmother had a strained relationship. Holidays were always tense. Conversations were always superficial. But I had assumed it was just a clash of personalities. Grandma was sharp and industrious. My father was sullen and prone to complaining. But a courthouse, that implied a lawsuit, that implied a judge. I took a photo of the letter and sent it to Elena. What does this mean? I typed. Her reply came 2 minutes later. It means we have a lead. Meet me at the office in an hour. I locked the townhouse and drove to Elena's office. The sky was overcast, a heavy gray blanket that promised rain. When I arrived, Elena was already on her computer, her glasses reflecting the blue light of the screen. I did a search while you were driving, she said without preamble. I searched the county civil docket archives. It is not easy because most records from the 90s are only partially digitized, but I found a case number. She turned the screen toward me. Case number 98 CV 4022. Henri Eleanor Russell versus Frank and Janet Russell, 1998. I whispered. I was 5 years old. It is listed as a family financial dispute. Elena said, most of the filings are sealed, likely because a minor was involved, but there is a metadata tag on the final disposition. She pointed to a line of text at the bottom. Petition for competency review denied. Motion for emergency custody of assets dismissed with prejudice. I stared at the words. Competency review. They tried to have her declared incompetent. I said, my voice sounded hollow. They tried to say she was crazy so they could take control of her money, and she fought back. Elena said, that is what she meant by correcting their story. She went to court and proved she was sound of mind, and the judge dismissed their claim with prejudice, which is legal speak for, do not ever bring this garbage into my courtroom again. I felt a wave of nausea. My grandmother was 55 in 1998. She was in the prime of her life. She was running 3 businesses. She was sharp as a tack. My parents had tried to gaslight the legal system 30 years ago. They had tried to seize her assets by claiming she was losing her mind. And now, they were doing the exact same thing to me. They are pivoting. Elena had said, they will claim you are mentally unfit. It wasn't a new strategy. It was their playbook. This establishes a pattern, Elena said, her voice grim. This proves that their financial predation is historical. It is not about a sudden medical bill or a bad economy. It is about a long-standing belief that they are entitled to control the Russell money. She printed the docket summary. I am going to file a motion to unseal these records, she said. If we can get the transcripts, we can show the court that they have a history of filing bad faith petitions. It will be a shield against any guardianship move they try to make on you. I took the paper. My hands were shaking. I need air, I said. I walked out of her office and drove to my neighborhood. I didn't want to go home. I felt restless, like my skin was too tight. I saw Mrs. Higgins gardening in her front yard 2 doors down from my grandmother's townhouse. Mrs. Higgins was 80 years old. She had lived on Elm Street since the flood of '72. She knew everything that happened on the block. I pulled over and got out. Hi, Mrs. Higgins, I called out. She looked up, shielding her eyes with a dirt-stained glove. Sarah, I haven't seen you in weeks. I saw your car at the house this morning. Everything okay? I walked up to the fence. Not really. I said, I found a letter from Grandma. She mentioned a fight with my parents. A bad one. Back in the 90s. Mrs. Higgins stopped weeding. She sat back on her heels and wiped her forehead. Ah, she said. The winter of '98. You remember it, honey. The whole street remembered it. She said, your father. He has a loud voice when he is angry. What happened, I asked. Please, I need to know. Mrs. Higgins sighed. She stood up. brushing dirt from her knees. I remember they came over one evening. It was snowing. You were in the car, asleep in the back seat. They went inside, and about 10 minutes later, the shouting started. I could hear it through my storm windows. She leaned against the fence, lowering her voice. Your father came storming out onto the porch. He kicked one of your grandmother's planters, the big ceramic one, smashed it to pieces. He was yelling back at the door. I will never forget what he said. What did he say? He said, "She thinks she can control us with money. She thinks she is better than us because she hoards it." And then your mother came out, pulling at his arm, trying to hush him up, but he was in a rage. He looked at me. He saw me watching and he just spat on the sidewalk and got in the car. Mrs. Higgins looked at me with sad eyes. Your grandmother never fixed that planter. She said she swept up the pieces, but she left the mark on the porch concrete. She told me once it was a reminder of what, that blood is not always thicker than water. Mrs. Higgins said, sometimes blood is just a stain. I drove back to my apartment with Mrs. Higgins' words ringing in my ears. She thinks she can control us. It was the anthem of the narcissist. Any boundary I set, any asset I protected, they viewed as an act of aggression against them. When I got home, there was a letter in my mailbox. It was a thick, cream-colored envelope. The return address was embossed in gold foil. Holloway Rusk Wealth Partners. I went inside and ripped it open. It wasn't an apology. Re Eleanor Russell, Testamentary Trust. Notice of defamation. Dear Ms. Russell, it has come to our attention that you have made several unfounded allegations regarding the integrity of our firm and its employees. Specifically, your assertions to third parties regarding forgery and conspiracy involving our client services division are actionable. Please be advised that Holloway Rusk acted in full compliance with all instructions received from the authorized trust liaison. Any attempt to disparage the firm's reputation will be met with immediate legal recourse. Furthermore, your continued inquiries and freeze requests are interfering with lawful trust administration and causing undue financial harm to the beneficiaries. We demand you cease and desist all defamatory statements immediately. I laughed. It was a terrified, shrill laugh. They were scared. They weren't offering to help find the fraudster. They were threatening the victim. They were circling the wagons, interfering with lawful trust administration. They were claiming that by stopping the theft, I was the one breaking the rules. I took a picture of the letter and texted it to Elena. They just declared war. I wrote. Her response was immediate. Good. That means they know we are close. Do not reply. I have news from the bank. I called her. What news? I asked. Mr. Sadowski from the fraud team called me. Elena said. Her voice was buzzing with energy. They finished the forensic review of the uploaded document, the authorization form that Marion Klein supposedly scanned. And they found a metadata tag in the PDF header, she said. Usually, when you scan a document at home, it just tags the scanner model. But this wasn't scanned at home. It was scanned at a commercial machine, a self-serve kiosk. A kiosk? Yes, Elena said. The machine stamps its location ID into the file structure so the vendor can track usage. The document was scanned at the Print Ship Center inside the Briar Glen office supply on Main Street. When I asked, Tuesday morning, she said, 8:15 a.m., 45 minutes before the transfer request was logged. I looked at the clock. It was 2 p.m. I'm going there. I said, Sarah, wait, I am going there. Elena, I need to know who held the paper. I hung up. I grabbed my keys. Briar Glen office supply was a staple of the town. It was where I bought my school supplies as a kid. It was where my father bought his printer paper. I walked in. The air smelled of toner and cardboard. The fluorescent lights hummed. I walked to the back, to the copy center. There was a row of 3 large gray machines. A young man with blue hair and a nose ring was stocking paper behind the counter. Excuse me, I said. He looked up. Yeah, I need to ask about a transaction from Tuesday morning. I said, around 8:15. Someone used one of these self-serve scanners. He shrugged. People use them all the time. I do not track them. It is important. I said, I pulled a $20 bill out of my wallet and put it on the counter. Please. It was a legal document. It is part of an investigation. He looked at the money, then at me. He leaned in conspiratorially. Tuesday morning, he asked. Tuesday morning, early. He scratched his chin. I opened on Tuesday. It was dead quiet. We only had like 2 customers before 9. Who were they? I asked. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. One was a mom printing flyers for a bake sale, he said. And the other guy? Yeah, I remember him. Because he was annoying. Annoying how he kept asking me how to change the contrast settings. The clerk said. He had this stack of papers, old-looking papers, and he wanted to make sure the signature looked crisp, he kept saying. I need it to look official. What did he look like? I asked. The clerk squinted. Older guy, heavy set, wore a flannel shirt and a hat, one of those veteran caps, Navy. I think I closed my eyes. My father served 4 years in the Navy. He wore his USS Midway cap everywhere. It was his trademark. He wore it to the grocery store. He wore it to the hardware store. And apparently, he wore it to commit a felony. Did you see the papers? I asked. Opening my eyes, just a glance. The clerk said, looked like legal stuff. One of them had a seal on it. He scanned it. Then he stood there for like 20 minutes typing on his phone. I guess he was emailing it. Thank you, I whispered. I turned and walked away. My legs felt numb. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a legacy credential glitch. It wasn't a mistake. My father had driven to this store at 8 in the morning. He had brought the forged document, probably something he had cut and pasted from the old trust files. He had bullied a clerk about contrast settings. He had scanned it, and then he had stood there, right in the middle of the office supply store, and emailed it to Holloway Rusk, or uploaded it to the bank portal using the stolen credentials. He had done it with the clear, sober intention of taking everything I had. I walked out to my car. I sat in the driver's seat. I put my hands on the wheel. I thought I would cry. I waited for the tears, but they didn't come. Instead, a cold, hard clarity settled over me. It was like the fever had finally broken. All my life, I had made excuses for them. They are just stressed. They just worry about me. They are my parents. But parents don't do this. Predators do this. I started the car. I didn't drive home. I drove to Elena's office. I walked in without knocking. Elena looked up, startled. What happened? She asked. It was him, I said. My voice was steady. The clerk identified him. He was wearing his Navy cap. He asked how to make the signature look official. Elena let out a breath. She took off her glasses. Okay, she said. That is it. That is the smoking gun. With the kiosk timestamp, the clerk's testimony, and the IP logs, we have a complete chain of evidence. She opened a drawer and pulled out a thick file. I drafted this yesterday, she said, just in case. She slid it across the desk. It was a formal complaint. Affidavit of forgery and identity theft. It laid it all out. The unauthorized access, the impersonation, the fraudulent transfer attempt, and it named the suspects Frank Russell, Janet Russell, and unknown co-conspirators at Holloway Rusk. You need to sign it, Elena said quietly. Once you sign this, Sarah, it goes to the district attorney. It goes to the bank's legal department. It triggers a criminal fraud investigation. There is no taking it back. I looked at the paper. I saw my father's face. I saw him teaching me how to check the oil in my car. I saw him at my high school graduation. And then I saw him at the diner, screaming that I was ungrateful. I saw him at the office supply store, adjusting the contrast on a lie. He had made his choice. He had chosen the money over me. Now, I had to choose the truth over him. I picked up the pen. The plastic felt cool against my fingers. I am not ungrateful, Dad, I whispered to the empty room. I am just independent. I signed my name. The ink was dark and permanent. I pushed the paper back to Elena. File it, I said. Elena nodded. She didn't smile. She just closed the folder. It is done, she said. I walked to the window and looked out at the street. The rain had started. It was washing the dust off the sidewalks, turning the asphalt black and shiny. The storm does not ask the tree for permission to blow. My grandmother was right. The storm was here, but I wasn't going to break. My roots went deeper than they knew. The filing of a criminal complaint is not like it looks in the movies. There is no dramatic music, no sudden swarm of uniformed officers descending on the perpetrators, and no immediate sense of justice being served. Instead, there is fluorescent lighting, the smell of stale coffee, and a detective who looks at your life's greatest tragedy as just another file to be stacked on a desk that is already groaning under the weight of paper. I sat across from Detective Harrison at the Briar Glen precinct on a Wednesday afternoon. He was a man in his 50s with a receding hairline and a tie that had a small mustard stain near the bottom. He flipped through the affidavit Elena had prepared, his eyes scanning the paragraphs with a practiced, weary detachment. "So, let me get this straight," he said, not looking up. "Your parents tried to access your trust fund. The bank stopped it. You have a witness who says your father scanned a document. He scanned a forged document." I corrected him. "He forged my signature and a witness signature on a trust authorization form." Detective Harrison sighed. He leaned back in his chair, the springs squeaking in the small room. "Ms. Russell, I will be honest with you. Fraud cases, especially familial ones, are messy. The district attorney hates them. Unless there is a direct loss, meaning the money actually left the account, it is often hard to prove criminal intent versus a civil dispute. They will say they had verbal permission. They will say it was a misunderstanding. It was not a misunderstanding," I said, keeping my voice level. "It was identity theft. They used a fake liaison identity." I know, he said, waving a hand. "We will open a file. We will assign a case number. We will send a request to the bank for their records, but do not expect a SWAT team. These things take time. Subpoenas take weeks. Banks have legal departments that move at the speed of glaciers." I looked at him, and I realized something terrifying. He was telling me the truth about the system, but he was missing the truth about the crime. To him, the delay was just bureaucracy. To my parents, and whoever was helping them, the delay was a weapon. "Time helps them, not you." My grandmother's words echoed in my head. Every day the police waited for a subpoena was a day my parents could try a different lock. Every week the district attorney debated intent was a week Holloway Russ could bury the evidence of their involvement. I left the precinct with a small index card containing a case number. But I did not feel safe. I felt like I was standing on a shoreline watching a tsunami form, while the lifeguard told me to just wait and see if the water actually touched me. I went straight to Elena's office. She was already in motion. "If the police are going to drag their feet, we have to sprint," she said. She was standing at her whiteboard, which was now covered in a complex web of names and dates. "We have a name," she said, tapping the board. "Marion Klein." I thought Marion Klein was a fake identity. I said, "A ghost my grandmother created." "She was," Elena said, "but ghosts need a vessel." I ran a background check on the name again, deeper this time. I cross-referenced it with local business filings, not just people. She turned her laptop toward me. Klein Document Services, sole proprietorship, owner Marion Klein, address Suite 4B, the strip mall on Oak Street. "She is real?" I asked. "She is real," Elena said. "She runs a small shop that handles notary services, estate filing, and courier work for law firms. And guess who appears on her vendor list?" I looked at the screen. Holloway Rusk Wealth Partners. "She is a contractor," Elena said. "She does the grunt work, the filing, the running, the stamping. She is the connection between the high-rise office and the dirty work. We need to talk to her." I said. Elena nodded. "I already called her. I told her we represent the Eleanor Russell estate and we have questions about a recent filing. She sounded terrified. She agreed to see us in an hour. Marion Klein's office was depressing. It was tucked between a vape shop and a struggling dry cleaner. The blinds were drawn, and the sign on the door was peeling vinyl. We walked in. The air inside smelled of dust and cheap vanilla air freshener. A woman sat behind a cluttered desk. She was in her 60s. wearing a cardigan that had seen better days. She looked like a librarian who had been fired for being too nervous. "Ms. Klein," Elena asked. The woman jumped. She looked at us, her eyes darting between me and Elena. I did not know you were bringing a lawyer," she stammered. "I am Sarah Russell," I said, stepping forward. "You are listed as the administrative liaison on my trust fund." "I want to know why." Marion Klein swallowed hard. She gestured to the 2 plastic chairs in front of her desk. "Please, sit. I do not want any trouble." We sat. Elena placed a recording device on the desk. "This conversation is being recorded for legal preservation." Elena said, "Marion, did you knowingly participate in a scheme to defraud the Eleanor Russell Trust?" "No." Marion cried out. She looked genuinely horrified. "Absolutely not. I run a legitimate business. I help people organize their papers. That is all." "Then explain to me," I said, "why your name was used to authorize a $480,000 transfer 2 days ago." Marion's hands were trembling. She picked up a paperclip and started bending it. "Your parents hired me," she said softly. "They came in last month. They said they were helping you. They said you were overwhelmed with the estate management and needed someone to handle the back-end filing. They brought boxes of old files." "And you just believed them?" I asked. "They had the original trust instrument," Marion said defensively. "People do not usually have the original binder unless they are authorized. They asked me to scan everything. They asked me to update the contact info." "Did they ask you to be the liaison?" Elena asked. Marion hesitated. She looked at the door, as if checking for an escape route. "Your mother." "She asked me a specific question." Marion said. She asked, "What is the fastest way to become authorized again?" She showed me an old document, a letter from a firm called Holloway that listed M. Klein as a dormant liaison. She asked if that was me. "And what did you say?" I told her it was a coincidence. Marion said, "I told her I have done work for Holloway before. But I was never a trustee on your account. I told her that to reactivate a liaison, the beneficiary you would have to sign a notarized affidavit in person." I leaned forward. "You told her it was impossible without me?" "Yes," Marion said. "I told her specifically. I said, 'Janet, I cannot touch that system without Sarah present.'" She got very quiet. She just thanked me and took the files back. I looked at Elena. "So you didn't upload the document?" I asked. "No," Marion said. "I swear on my life. I scanned the files they brought, just for their records. But I never logged into the banking system. I do not even have those credentials." "Then how did your name appear on the log?" Elena asked. Marion looked helpless. "I do not know. Unless what?" "Unless someone who already had access to the system just typed my name in." Marion whispered, "Someone who needed a name that looked familiar to the auditors but wasn't actually involved." I sat back. My parents didn't just use Marion. They set her up. They used her name as the scapegoat. If the fraud was caught, the trail would lead to this sad little office in a strip mall. Not to them. But Marion had said something crucial. I do not even have those credentials. If Marion didn't log in, and my parents barely knew how to use a PDF scanner, who did the actual coding? Who bypassed the security protocols to insert Marion's name as an active user? It had to be someone inside. Someone at Ashford Trust Services, or someone at Holloway Rusk who had a backdoor into Ashford's system. We left Marion's office. The sun was setting, casting long, bruised shadows across the parking lot. "They have help." "Sarah?" Elena said. "High-level help. Someone who knows the architecture of that trust better than the bank does. I am going to request an internal audit of Ashford." Elena continued, pulling out her phone. "We need to see which specific employee ID authorized the change to the liaison status." My phone buzzed. I looked down. It was a text message. "Dad. Meet me at the Route 9 diner. 7 o'clock. Just us. No lawyers. One last talk to clear the air. Please, Sarah." I stared at the screen. The Route 9 diner. We used to go there for pancakes on Sunday mornings when I was a kid. It was neutral ground. It was a place of memory. "Do not go," Elena said, reading the text over my shoulder. "It is a trap. They want to corner you. I have to go. I said, why? Because I need to hear him say it. I said, I need to hear him admit it when he doesn't think a judge is listening. Elena pursed her lips. She didn't like it, but she understood. If you go, she said, you record everything. This state has a one-party consent law for recording conversations in public places where there is no reasonable expectation of privacy. A diner counts. But be careful. If he suspects you are recording, he might shut down or worse. I will be careful. I said, I drove to the diner alone. The neon sign buzzed in the twilight, a beacon of nostalgia that now felt like a warning light. I parked in the back, away from the streetlights. I walked inside. The diner smelled of frying bacon and coffee, a smell that usually comforted me, but now made my stomach turn. My father was sitting in a booth in the far corner. He was wearing a plaid shirt and his navy cap, the same cap the clerk at the office supply store had described. He looked older than I remembered. His face was slack, his eyes tired. I slid into the booth opposite him. I had my phone in my purse, the recording app running, the microphone facing out through the fabric. Hello, Dad? I said. He didn't smile. He wrapped his hands around a mug of coffee. You look tired. Sarah, he said, I am tired. I said, I have been fighting identity theft for 3 days. It is exhausting. He winced. He took a sip of coffee. We did not want it to be like this. He said quietly, you have to believe that. We never wanted to hurt you. Then why did you forge my signature? I asked. He looked out the window at the passing cars. It wasn't forgery. Sarah, it was correction. Correction. Your grandmother, he said, his voice hardening slightly. She poisoned you. She poisoned this whole family. She took money that should have been used to build a legacy for all of us. And she locked it away in a box with your name on it. She did it to control us from the grave. The money was hers. Dad, I said, she earned it. She earned it because we helped her, he snapped, his voice rising enough that a waitress 2 booths over looked up. Who do you think fixed the delivery vans for the dry cleaners? Me. Who do you think managed the books in the early days? Your mother. We built that wealth too. And then she cut us out because we had one bad year. One bad winter. The winter of '98. I said. He froze. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. You know about that, he whispered. I found the letter. I said, I know you tried to have her declared incompetent. I know the judge threw it out. He slammed his hand on the table. The silverware clattered. The judge was wrong, he hissed. She was senile. She was paranoid. She was hoarding money while we were drowning in debt. And now you are doing the same thing. You are sitting on $500,000 while your mother cries herself to sleep every night wondering if we will have a roof over our heads next month. So you decided to take it. I said, we were going to borrow it, he insisted, just for a year. Put it into a high-yield vehicle with Holloway. We would have doubled it. You would have been richer. We would have been safe. It was a victimless crime. Sarah, I leaned across the table. A victimless crime, I repeated. You tried to gaslight me. You tried to make me think I was crazy. You hacked my account. You changed my address so I wouldn't see the notices. You tried to erase me from my own life. I did what I had to do, he said. He was breathing hard now. His face red. I am the head of this family. It is my job to fix things. And if you were a good daughter, you would have handed that money over voluntarily. You would have trusted us. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had raised me. And I realized that he didn't see me as a person. He saw me as an obstacle. He saw me as a stubborn bank vault that he had failed to crack. I have one question. Dad, I said, and I want the truth. He glared at me. What if it is family money? I said, keeping my voice very soft. If it was just a misunderstanding, and you were just trying to help, why did my banking app lock me out? He blinked. What the app? I said. It said, access denied. It locked because someone tried to answer my security questions and failed. If you are my family, if you know me so well, why didn't you know the answer to the security question? He stared at me. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He didn't know the answer. That was the one thing he couldn't fake. He could forge the signature. He could steal the files. But he couldn't fake the intimacy of knowing the real answer to a personal question. I stood up. "You failed the test, Dad," I said, "in more ways than one." He stood up too. He towered over me, blocking the exit from the booth. "You listen to me," he said. His voice was a low growl. "You think you are smart? You think your little lawyer friend can save you. You are playing a game you do not understand. We are not alone in this. I know." I said, "I know about Holloway. I know about the kiosk. And I know about the police report I filed this afternoon." His face went white. "Police report. I am not the one who is going to regret this." "Dad," I said. He grabbed my arm. His fingers dug into my flesh. "You ungrateful little—" I pulled my arm away. "Touch me again," I said loudly, "and I will scream." He stepped back. He looked around the diner. People were watching now. "You are going to regret humiliating us. Sarah," he spat. "You are going to wish you had just signed the paper." I walked away. I walked out of the diner, my legs shaking so hard I could barely feel the floor. I got into my car and locked the doors. I sat there for a moment, breathing in the smell of old upholstery and fear. I checked my phone. The recording was saved. Duration 12 minutes. I had him. I had the confession. We were going to borrow it. I did what I had to do. I started the car to drive away. But before I could put it in gear, my phone chimed. A distinctive, sharp chime. I looked down. Bank alert. Transaction attempted. My heart stopped. I opened the app. It wasn't the trust account. That was frozen. It was my personal savings account, the one with $12,000 in it, my emergency fund, my car repair fund. Transfer initiated, $9,500 to external account. Status pending. I stared at the screen. How I had changed the passwords. I had enabled two-factor authentication. Then I saw the method. Transfer method, a CH. Push via linked. External debit card. They hadn't logged in. They hadn't guessed the password. They had used a physical piece of information. A voided check. An old debit card number they had written down years ago. They were bypassing the digital security entirely. They were using the plumbing of the banking system, the slow, old-fashioned rails that moved money from one routing number to another. They weren't just trying to take the trust anymore. They were punishing me. They were draining the liquid cash I needed to pay my lawyer. They were trying to bleed me dry. I called Elena. "They are doing it again." I shouted into the phone as I sped onto the highway. "They are hitting my personal savings." "Freeze it," Elena yelled. "Call the bank now." "I am trying," I said, "but the app says it is pending. It is in the pipes." "Sarah, listen to me," Elena said, her voice sharp and commanding. "This isn't a random attack. This is a scorched earth policy. They know you went to the police. They are trying to cripple you before the investigation gets traction. What do I do?" "Come to my office, now. Even if it is late, we have to file an emergency motion." "An emergency motion for what?" "For a temporary restraining order on all assets," Elena said. "Not just the trust, everything. We need a judge to order a blanket freeze on every account bearing the name Russell. It is the nuclear option. It will freeze you too. You won't be able to buy groceries. You won't be able to pay rent. Do it," I said without hesitation. "Are you sure?" Elena asked. "It means you will be destitute on paper until the hearing." "I do not care," I said. "I would rather starve than let them take another cent." I hung up and pressed the accelerator. The highway stretched out before me, dark and empty. I was racing. I was racing my parents. I was racing the bank's automated clearinghouse. I was racing the invisible hand of Holloway Rusk. My father's threat echoed in the car. "You are playing a game you do not understand." He was right. I hadn't understood the game. I thought the game was about money. But now I knew the truth. The game wasn't about money. It was about domination. It was about breaking the will of the person who dared to say no. I gripped the steering wheel. Let them try to break me. I was made of stronger stuff than they realized. I was the granddaughter of the woman who stood on her porch and watched a man smash her planter. and then refused to sweep up the scar. I would be the scar they couldn't scrub away. The judge signed the temporary restraining order at 9 o'clock on Friday morning. It was a piece of paper that cost me $3,000 in legal fees, but it acted like a concrete wall dropping between my parents and my life. The ACH transfer of $9,500. The attempt to drain my personal emergency fund was halted in the digital ether. The money hovered in the banking pipes for 3 hours, suspended between pending and processed, before finally bouncing back into my account with a sterile notification transaction. Cancelled by institution. I sat in Elena's office, staring at the screen. I was safe. For the moment, I was safe, but safety felt remarkably like paralysis. The restraining order was a blanket freeze. It locked the trust. It locked my savings. It locked my credit cards. I had $40 in cash in my wallet, a half tank of gas, and a refrigerator that contained a carton of milk and 2 apples. I was functionally destitute, a prisoner of my own protection. Elena sat across from me, her face illuminated by the glow of her laptop. She looked exhausted. We had been running on adrenaline and bad coffee for 4 days. "The freeze is absolute," she said, rubbing her temples. "No money moves in or out without a court signature. That includes your parents. They are cut off. If they try to initiate so much as a $10 transfer, they will be in contempt of court." I nodded. It should have felt like a victory. Instead, it felt like I had just survived a car crash only to realize I was stranded in the middle of a desert. "They will not stop," I said. I remembered the look in my father's eyes at the diner, the sheer, unadulterated entitlement. "You are playing a game you do not understand. They can't move money," Elena said, "but they can make noise. And right now, silence is what the other side wants." She turned her laptop around. Ashford Trust Services finally responded to the audit request. She said. I leaned forward. "The trust administrator, the keepers of the vault. What did they find?" I asked. Elena tapped the screen. "Look at the log for the reinstatement of the liaison status. We knew Marion Klein didn't do it. We knew your parents couldn't code their way out of a paper bag. So we asked Ashford to identify the user ID that authorized the change." I looked at the line of text. User ID EMP-4492. Authorization level senior compliance. "It wasn't an external hack," Elena said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "It was an internal override. An employee at Ashford Trust Services went into the system, manually bypassed the beneficiary notification protocol, and reinstated Marion Klein as the active liaison." I felt the blood drain from my face. "An inside job?" I asked. "Someone inside Ashford did a favor for someone outside," Elena said, "and given the timeline, given the sophistication, it was Holloway Rusk." I finished. "My father's friends. They didn't just advise your parents," Elena said. "They facilitated the breach. They called in a marker with a contact at the trust administration firm to force the door open. That is not just fraud. Sarah, that is racketeering. That is a federal crime." She sat back, a grim smile playing on her lips. "And that is why we just received this." She slid a piece of heavy cream-colored stationery across the desk. It wasn't a threat this time. It was an invitation. Re Eleanor Russell Estate. Proposal for global resolution. Dear Miss Park, in light of recent misunderstandings and the complex emotional nature of the familial dispute, Holloway Rusk believes that a protracted legal engagement serves no party's best interest. We propose a confidential settlement conference to address all outstanding concerns and restructure the trust administration to Ms. Russell's satisfaction. Time is of the essence. They are terrified." I said, reading the letter. "They know we have the audit log." Elena said, "They know that if we proceed to the discovery phase, the part of the lawsuit where we get to read their emails, we are going to find a communication chain linking their executive to the Ashford employee. They want to kill this story before it gets into a courtroom. So what do?" I asked. "We go to the meeting," Elena said. "We walk into their office, and we listen to their offer, and then we burn them down." The meeting was scheduled for Monday morning. I spent the weekend in my apartment, sitting in the silence, I didn't answer my phone. I didn't check my email. I just sat there, thinking about the winter of 1998. I thought about my grandmother standing on her porch, watching her son smash a ceramic planter because he couldn't get what he wanted. She had fought them alone. She had stood in a courtroom and proved she was sane while they tried to paint her as crazy. She had won, but she had lost her family in the process. Now, it was my turn. On Monday morning, I put on my navy blazer again. I brushed my hair until it shone. I looked in the mirror. I didn't look like a victim. I looked like a CEO. I met Elena in the lobby of the Holloway Rusk building. The security guard checked our IDs with a deferential nod. We took the elevator to the penthouse floor. The conference room was vast. One wall was entirely glass, offering a panoramic view of the city. The table was mahogany, polished to a mirror shine. My parents were already there. They sat on one side of the table. My father was wearing a suit that smelled of mothballs. He didn't look at me. He looked at his hands, which were clenched into fists on the leather notepad. My mother looked smaller than I had ever seen her. Her face was puffy, her eyes darting around the room like a trapped bird. Next to them sat a man I hadn't met. He wasn't Mr. Vance, the dismissive compliance manager. This man was older, smoother. He had silver hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Ms. Russell, Ms. Park," he said, standing up. "I am Arthur Holloway, senior partner. Thank you for coming." The head of the firm. They had brought out the big guns. We sat down. Elena placed her briefcase on the table with a heavy thud. "Let us skip the pleasantries. Mr. Holloway," Elena said. "We are here because your firm is facing a potential RICO indictment, and you want to know what it will take to make us go away." "Mr." Holloway chuckled. It was a dry practice sound. "You are a fiery one. Ms. Park, I respect that. But let us not be melodramatic. We are here to resolve a family dispute." He gestured to my parents. "Frank and Janet are distraught," he said. "They acted out of panic. Financial stress does terrible things to good people. They made a mistake in judgment, attempting to access funds they believed erroneously. Perhaps, but sincerely were available for family use. Our firm simply tried to assist long-standing clients in navigating the paperwork." He turned his gaze to me. It was a warm, paternal gaze. It made my skin crawl. "Sarah," he said softly. "May I call you Sarah, Ms. Russell?" I said, "Ms. Russell, I understand you feel violated, but we must look at the bigger picture. Your parents are facing bankruptcy. They made a desperate move. Does that warrant a criminal record? Does it warrant dragging your grandmother's name through the press?" He was good. He was framing it as a tragedy, not a crime. He was trying to make me feel small and petty for demanding justice. It wasn't a mistake in judgment. "Mr. Holloway," I said. My voice was steady. It was a coordinated attack. I opened my folder. I pulled out a photograph. I slid it across the table. It was the picture of the kiosk watermark. This document was forged. I said, "It was scanned at Briar Glen Office Supply at 8:15 in the morning on Tuesday. My father was identified by the clerk. He was wearing his Navy cap. He asked how to make the signature look official." My father flinched. He looked at the photo, then looked away. "And this," I said, sliding the second photo. It was the picture from the lobby wall. My father and the Holloway executive, smiling at the gala. "You said you acted on instructions from a stranger named Marion Klein." I said, "You claimed you didn't know the family dynamic. Yet here is my father, at your gala. 4 years ago, you have been grooming him. You have been billing him for strategic consultation for 7 years. You weren't helping him navigate paperwork. You were teaching him how to bypass the trust triggers. Mr. Holloway's smile didn't falter, but his eyes went hard. "Consultations are standard," he said. "We discuss scenarios. Scenarios I asked, like the scenario where you use an internal employee at Ashford Trust to override the security protocols." I slid the third document across the table, the audit log, user ID EMP4492. The room went deadly silent. Mr. Holloway looked at the log. He didn't touch it. He knew exactly what it was. "That is an internal Ashford document," he said quietly. "You shouldn't have that. A court order says otherwise," Elena said. I looked at my parents. My mother was staring at the audit log, her mouth slightly open. She hadn't known about that part. She hadn't known how deep the fix went. "Mom," I said. She looked up at me. Tears were spilling down her cheeks. "Did you know?" I asked. "Did you know they had a guy on the inside?" She shook her head frantically. No, Sarah. Dad said he had a friend who could fast-track it. He said it was just red tape." "Stop talking." "Janet," my father snapped. "No," I said. "Let her talk." I turned to my mother. "You said you were trying to protect me." I said, "You said you were just borrowing the money. We were," she sobbed, "we were going to put it back. Then why did you change the address?" I asked. The question hung in the air. Why did you change my email? Why did you change my phone number if you were just borrowing it? If it was just a family loan? Why did you cut me off? My mother looked at my father. He was staring at the table, his jaw working. She looked back at me. The defense crumbled. The mask of the worried mother slipped away, revealing the frightened, complicit woman underneath. We needed the notices to stop coming to you," she whispered. "Why?" I asked. "Because if you saw them, you would say no." She covered her face with her hands. "You always say no," she cried, her voice muffled. "You are so stingy. You sit on that money like a dragon. We needed it." "Sarah, we needed it to breathe, and we knew if we asked. You would give us a lecture about budgets, so we wanted to do it without the fight. We wanted to take the money, fix the business, and put it back before you ever noticed." I stared at her. It wasn't about protection. It wasn't about love. It was about control. They felt entitled to the money. They viewed my ownership of it as a mistake, a clerical error they had a moral right to correct, and to do that, they had to blind me. They had to erase me. That is the truth. "Isn't it?" I said softly. "You didn't want a daughter. You wanted a resource, and when the resource started talking back, you tried to shut it down." My father looked up. His eyes were red, filled with a mixture of shame and fury. "We gave you everything," he shouted. "We gave you a home. We gave you a life. And this is how you repay us, by recording us, by bringing lawyers to humiliate us." "I didn't humiliate you." "Dad," I said, "you humiliated yourselves. Mr. Holloway cleared his throat. He tapped a gold pen on the table, drawing the attention back to him. "This is clearly a deeply painful emotional situation," he said smoothly, "and it is one that should be handled privately." He opened a folder in front of him. "Sarah, our firm is prepared to offer a solution, a global resolution." He slid a document toward me. "We are willing to establish a new independent trust for you," he said, "funded by Holloway Rusk. We will match the original principal, $480,000. It will be yours." I looked at the paper. It was a settlement agreement. "And in exchange," I asked. "In exchange," he said, "you will sign a confidentiality agreement regarding the administrative errors at Ashford Trust. You will withdraw the police report against your parents, and you will agree to a structured disbursement schedule for the new fund's $2,000 a month, managed by our firm, to ensure long-term stability." I looked at the number. $2,000 a month. It was the same number my father had offered. They were trying to put me on an allowance. They were trying to buy my silence, recreate the trust under their own terms, and keep me under their thumb for the next 40 years. "It is a generous offer." "Mr. Holloway said, "your parents get to walk away without a criminal record. You get your money guaranteed. The family is preserved. Everyone wins." I looked at the document. I looked at the zeros. It was a lot of money. It was security. It was the easy way out. I could sign this, walk away, and never have to see my parents or this smug man again. I could go back to my quiet life in Briar Glen. But I would know. I would know that I had sold the truth. I would know that I had let them win. I would know that my grandmother's legacy, her fight for independence, had been traded for a monthly check. I stood up. I picked up the settlement offer. No, I said. Mr. Holloway blinked. Excuse me? No, I repeated. I do not want your money. I have my money. It is sitting in the account you tried to steal, and I am not going to let you manage it. Sarah, be reasonable. Mr. Holloway said, his voice hardening. If you walk away from this, we will fight you. We will tie that trust up in litigation for 10 years. You won't see a dime. I do not care, I said. I turned to my parents. I am not signing. I said, I am keeping the police report active. I am keeping the fraud investigation open. And I am going to sue this firm for conspiracy. My mother made a sound like a wounded animal. Sarah, please. They will put your father in jail. That is not my fault. Mom, I said, he broke the law. I looked at my father. He was staring at me with pure hatred. You are dead to me, he whispered. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, like a rib cracking, but then the pain faded, replaced by a cold, clean emptiness. I have been dead to you for a long time. Dad, I said, since the day you decided my signature was just something to be copied. I turned to Elena. Let us go, I said. We walked out. We left the settlement offer sitting on the polished table. We walked out of the penthouse, down the elevator, and into the cool, gray air of the street. I took a deep breath. It smelled of rain and exhaust, but it tasted like freedom. I did it. I said, I actually said no. You did, Elena said. She looked proud, but she also looked worried. She was checking her phone. What is it? I asked. Elena frowned. She tapped the screen. I just got a notification from the court filing system. She said, my stomach dropped. What? It is a pre-filing notice, she said. From opposing counsel, a new firm, not Holloway, a litigation specialist. What are they filing? Elena looked at me. Her eyes were serious. They are filing a petition for adjudication of incompetency. She said. I stared at her. The world seemed to tilt. Incompetency, I whispered. They are claiming you are mentally unstable, Elena said. Reading the summary, they are citing your erratic behavior, your refusal of reasonable family settlements, and your paranoid delusions regarding conspiracy. They are asking the court to appoint a temporary guardian to manage the estate while your mental health is evaluated. Who? I asked. Who is asking for guardianship? Elena looked at the bottom of the screen. Frank and Janet Russell, she said. I closed my eyes. They weren't stopping. They had failed to steal the money. They had failed to bribe me. So now, they were going to try to destroy my mind. They were going to do exactly what they had tried to do to my grandmother in 1998. They were going to rewrite the story. I opened my eyes. I looked at the gray sky. Let them come. I said, I wasn't the little girl hiding in the closet anymore. I wasn't the dutiful daughter paying their bills. I was Sarah Russell. And I had the one thing they didn't have. I had the truth. And I had the receipt. I turned to Elena. Do we have the transcripts from 98? I asked. We will have them by tomorrow, she said. Good, I said. If they want to question my sanity, I am going to put their history on the stand. I started walking toward my car. The fight wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of the storm. I was the storm. Thank you for listening to My Banking App Said Access Denied. My parents tried to drain my $480,000 trust fund, and this story was a journey into the dark side of family loyalty and the price of independence. I hope Sarah's fight resonated with you. I would love to know where you are listening from. Please drop your city or country in the comments below. It is always amazing to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to Revenge Stories for more tales of betrayal, justice, and the long road to redemption. And tell me in the comments, would you have signed the settlement, or would you have burned it down like Sarah? Until next time. Keep your eyes open and your passwords safe.